And here we are for a Sunday edition of Dualistic Unity Raw. Um, I want to get into it right away because it's important, and I haven't talked about this in some time. But in all of the time that we have been doing this podcast, there has been this increased feeling of just being ourselves. And in being ourselves, we are communicating whatever it is we are. And there's a flow to it. There's an ease to it. And it almost feels like we are not talking. Like talking is just happening as a result of what we are, but we're not putting an effort into that talking. And as a result, we're able to access more of what we are because it's not the conceptual I that's doing it. So I'm not limiting myself to the small spectrum of what I can consider is possible for me. And so the whole spectrum of thought and insight is available all the time. And in that experience of just allowing yourself to be yourself, you find that you're actually quite insightful, and you can be very good at things, and you can be quite empathetic. And all of a sudden there is a degree of self-efficacy in just letting go in general. Now, for anybody here who's listened to the podcast for a long time, you've heard a lot of insights that we've shared. You've heard of a lot of insights that I've shared. And if I were to tell you right now that those insights were revealed to me and are revealed to me in an ongoing fashion by the eternal elf queen of the fairy kingdom, some of you would scoff and go, well, that's not possible. And others would go, well, all the other shit's been really good. So maybe it's true. Maybe I'll entertain it. And that right there is the problem. Because not only are you just entertaining this relatively innocuous belief that I'm getting this information from the elf queen of the fairy kingdom, but what you're also agreeing to is that the insights that I've shared with you didn't come from me. And if they didn't come from me, then ultimately they can't come from you. Or at least that's not the message that I'm embodying. And it might be that I'm saying those insights can come from you. But if that's not true for me, can you really believe that? And that is my problem with channelers. It's not that they aren't saying things that are insightful to some degree. Whales being dolphin oversoul was a bit much for me. And that's specifically regarding Bashar. But Bashar, Paul Anka, I think his name is, has been doing this since the 80s. Like, he knows his shtick well. He knows his gimmick well. Now, that's assuming that he knows it. And after 30, 40 years, you kind of have to. Like, to watch your own quote unquote accent change over time, every time you're channeling, quote unquote, you would have to question it after some degree or after some point. But you wouldn't want to question it publicly if it's your bread and butter. And you would rationalize it as, but we're giving people good insights. What is the problem? It's the underlying message. That is the problem. The problem is the underlying message that you are not the source of your own insight. And if you're telling people that they are the source of their own insight, but you're not, it's hypocritical and contradictory. And it sends a message underlying that people are going to start to believe. And this is why now what you have are people who follow Bashar who are now channeling themselves. And the problem with the idea of channeling in general is that it contradicts the very message of a unified consciousness that is being brought across by this channeled entity. Because to be channeled, there has to be 2 points and a channel between them. And so to go just a bit further, I understand that there is also a temptation as one starts to wake up, as one starts to open up to more insights and whatnot, to fall back onto your old mental image of yourself. So regardless of the insights that you can see, it couldn't possibly be yours because you're a piece of shit. You're not intelligent enough. You're a mere mortal. You're all this crap, right? And so all of a sudden now you have these insights which you can access, but you can't let go of your idea of yourself. And so all of a sudden the insights belong to something else. And it doesn't matter if it's source consciousness or God, the Archangel Michael, or Bashar. The only reason that that assumption is made is because of a lack of ability to reconcile your own self-image with the insights that you have access to. And so rather than say you, because that allows you to make the same comfortable narrative that you've been holding on to the entire time, plus you get the egotistical benefit of being the one and only conduit to this ultra intelligent being. And so there are a lot of entanglements that go with channeling. But at the end of the day, the message that underlies it is that I don't have access to these insights. I have access through something else, and that is the perceived division that is being brought across. And it's not that the insights aren't pleasant, and that's unfortunately the draw of all good snake oil. It feels good in the short term. But the problem with channelers is that if they don't have the source of the insights, you don't have the source of the insights, which means you have to keep coming back for more insights.
And that's what keeps them coming back. Like that's how they keep doing that, because you mentioned the necessity of the 2 points there, and the reality is it's like a cycle or whatever. Like they're from you, expresses you as you. There isn't that division, but as long as you're maintaining some conceptual idea of yourself, like it's got to be coming from somewhere else, happening from some other thing. Because if it is just a loop instead of 2 points with a line in between it, then you can't say where it starts or ends, and you are the sort of recurring source of that insight. And so what are you really expressing by channeling that stuff? And this is something we've brought up before, and I don't think I necessarily, not that I didn't understand and recognize the irresponsibility in it, but didn't understand that like we're always expressing what we are as opposed to the things that we're saying. It can be really nice to think, oh, I'm just sharing this insight, expressing this thing to help someone else, and it's like another way to feel better about yourself, basically. But it allows you to then maintain that, ultimate the ultimate insight. Like the only way to do this or be this is to have to channel it yourself. And so it's just interesting how we want to focus on the insights. We want to just focus on what's being shared, what's being said, as opposed to the mentality being brought across, which is very, very divided. It's very conceptual. It's very much like this is coming from something else. And it's just maintaining that these ideas that I hold on to are the truth. And this is what's happening. And this is what's going on, as opposed to taking that responsibility for them and expressing that. Because then, as you said, that allows them to stay in business, basically. And so, I like that. I like that text right there. That's a nice little script. So it's funny because even just talking about, Dualistic Unity or our business or something, like it doesn't necessarily make sense to people who don't understand that it's not about a shift in what's said or what's done. It's about a shift in mentality, like we were talking about with structures versus the shift in mentality. Like we're looking for a different structure. Like Bashar is just another medium with which people are able to look to feel better and feel better about themselves, no differently than gaining insights from a religion. It's just this person happens to be dead and they had all these insights, and so it couldn't possibly come from me. And it just keeps us in this sort of loop of constantly looking to someone else or something else for the ability to feel better about ourselves, or just get some way to alleviate our suffering. And so it keeps us looking around to the answer, never looking at ourselves and looking within, or just sitting with ourselves. And so if someone is able to express that and express the channeling and whatnot, and say that it's coming from something else, it's like it's so obviously now for me to understand, like, it allows them to maintain that thing that allows them to feel better about themselves. Like, I am the one who is the expert channeler. It's like always everyone's trying to be the expert with things, or to help themselves feel better about something. And if they're doing it means that you got to keep coming back, or you got to start channeling yourself. Like, that's the only thing, the ultimate thing that you can come to. And then if it's some like magical thing that Bashar is able to tap into, then it's kind of unique to him. And I don't even understand, like, I haven't seen a ton of Bashar stuff. I've seen some of it, but like, where that comes from, or was just like he started having insights and he was just didn't want to take responsibility for them, so he created some character back in the 80s, and then people started wanting to listen to it, but because he was the conduit, he was able to feel really fucking good about himself and feel like he was this chosen entity to express these things. But again, it's like, what is he expressing? Really? He's expressing irresponsibility. Like, you got to look to something else. You got to get it from somewhere else. You can't take it upon yourself to understand any of these things. And so that's what allows, it's like the same sort of, I don't know, it's like another business strategy, essentially, no differently than any other snake oil salesman. Like, there is that twang of irresponsibility that then allows him to stay in business, as opposed to, I don't know, like, with how we're running Dualistic Unity, like, it's not necessarily like, it's very different than businesses are run. Like I was saying, like, people don't necessarily understand it because we're kind of expressing something that may put us out of business. And that's why we're not doing this to become, you know, billionaires, which is another thing that people sometimes can't wrap their heads around. It's like, what do you mean you're not trying to have all of the money in the world for yourself? It's like, because we don't need that. You don't need that. And so we're always expressing the mentality that we're bringing across, and we think it's the insights, but it's really, we're expressing ourselves no matter what we're doing, and the mentality we're bringing across. And so if you're saying that these insights are coming from somewhere else, all it's doing is telling other people that they can't have them themselves and take it upon themselves and take responsibility. And so it's always going to be, oh, if something's happening to me, it's because of something else, or it's stemming from something else, or it's because of another person. That's the ultimate message being brought across, as opposed to, no, it's coming from you. But with that, that's the most empowering thing you can recognize, is it's coming from you, or you're the one that's kind of perpetuating it. And so you're the one who can let it go. But as long as you think it's coming from something else, then the solve has to come from someone or something else as well. They go hand in hand.
But it validates that perspective of something else. Like, somebody who believes in quote unquote source consciousness will eat up what a channeler says and just disregard the fact that they're channeling a being from another galaxy or an alien or whatever they're channeling, right? They'll just disregard that. And the reason being is because that person believing in source consciousness or God is still perceiving a division that isn't there. So to them, they're getting insights from source. They're getting insights from their higher self. They're getting insights from. They're getting insights from. And therefore, it's okay that these people are getting insights from, because there's the same level of underlying irresponsibility. and they're validating one another, whether they recognize it or not. Now, I want to go back because here's the hallmark of good snake oils. All right, I've watched some Bashar. I've watched enough. He has what he calls the excitement formula. This is the formula to mastering your life. This is the formula to manifesting what is best for you. Here we go. Are you ready? Number 1, act on your excitement, your passion, and whatever is most exciting to you in the moment. Do this every moment that you can. Number 2, do this to the best of your ability. Take it as far as you can go until you cannot take it any further. Number 3, act on your excitement and passion with absolutely no insistence, assumption, or expectation of what the outcome should be. So this is all really good, right? Number 4, choose to remain in a positive state regardless of what happens. Number 5, constantly investigate your belief systems. Release and replace the unpreferred beliefs, fear-based beliefs, and beliefs not in alignment with who you would prefer to be, such as a channeler, such as a being that's being channeled. So the contradiction in the last one is obvious. There's an underlying belief that he won't question himself, right? But number 4 is where the snake oil is. Number 4 is where he gets you by the balls. Choose to stay in a positive frame of mind. Now there's a right way to be. Now, when you're not feeling positive, where are you going to go? Back to the source of your insight, which is him, or rather not him, right? Because it can't be you. So all of a sudden, if you're not in a positive state of being, you're not doing it the right way according to this hyper-intelligent being, this hyper-intelligent awareness. That whole thing is the basis of snake oil, that there is a right way. And more importantly, that there's a right way and it's known by something that is more intelligent than you.
Yeah, well said. I think that's the point I didn't necessarily get probably like a year ago about channeling and whatnot. Was I think I was still under the assumption that there is a right way. And I was kind of thinking about this the other day, like, just like different insights hitting me. And it's so funny because you said like the unwillingness to question the insights, right? And so it hit me, with relaxation. I was like, oh, all this is about is just relaxing. No matter what's going on, just relax. But immediately you're going to feel like you're doing something wrong if you're tense. And so the answer, it's not just relaxing. That's not the right thing, because there are some situations in which maybe you're going to be tense. And so if you settle upon that, and it was like immediately, as soon as I was like typing in my notes, it's like, oh, it's just about relaxation. Whatever I'm going through, just relax. That's like, I was thinking like, oh, all right, I figured it out. And there's certain points where sometimes an insight, it'll hit you, and it's just based on the context or whatever you're dealing with or going through. It hits so hard, and you're just like, oh my god. Like there was a point where a few months ago where I was realizing that when I relax, like it's reality relaxing. So if I want to help the world relax, like I just got to relax myself. And it hit in a way that I was like, oh, that's just relax, just relax. And I think I said it on a call like a bajillion times, just because it was hitting me in that way. Like me relaxing is me relaxing. But it's in the state of mind that I was in. But then, so I was thinking about it the other day with relaxation, and immediately I was like, wait a second. But then if I'm tense, I'm going to think I'm doing something wrong. And instead of recognizing that being tense is just as valid as being relaxed, and then you relax there, but not because relaxation is the right answer, because you recognize there is no right answer. And so you can't even settle upon doing something wrong. But if the assumption is that there is a right way, as you said, like as soon as you feel like you're not doing it the right way, you're going to tense up. You're going to run back to wherever that, source comes from. You're going to start looking around as opposed to sitting with that and being like, okay, I'm tense right now. Maybe it's bringing my attention to the situation that I'm in. Sometimes when I'm too relaxed or confident going into a situation, I'm not as attentive to what's going on. Sometimes being a little more tense, feeling a little bit more, whatever that means. Because again, tension, relaxation, they're just words we use to describe certain feelings or situations, but we don't know. Maybe there's, a buildup for a situation like we've talked before about anxiety, fear, worry, they're all intense feelings that aren't wrong. A lot of times they have a not a reason necessarily, but sort of to like bring your attention to where you're at. And you can sort of utilize them, not for a purpose, but just to recognize, okay, this isn't the wrong thing. Because then if it's the wrong thing, I'm going to try and get rid of it as opposed to paying attention. I'm going to focus on the thing and trying to get rid of it as opposed to paying attention to where I'm at, which is you're allowed to do when you stop thinking there's something wrong. But as long as you're holding on to there being a right way, a right answer, a correct way to be, the preferential sort of thing, the thing that helps you feel good. As soon as something doesn't, you're going to think you're doing something wrong. And then go back to, if you're into the channeling stuff, you're going to sprint back to fucking Bashar's page and start scrolling and being like, all right, I'm not doing, okay, where's the insight that is going to help me? And it's going to help me do this because I'm doing something wrong right now. And he's got the answers and I'm going to be able to do this, as opposed to, oh, maybe there isn't a right answer. Then it just comes back to you and you realize, oh, and again, it's the most empowering thing you can realize, but then Bashar is going to get less traffic if there isn't a right way. It means that he doesn't have all the answers. And so when it hit me, relaxation, then I was like, wait a second, but then I'm going to feel like I'm doing something wrong if I'm not. So immediately, like, I questioned that when it hit me, which is one of his things he doesn't want to do, is like, no, this is objective truth. Like, it's coming from Bashar, or it's coming from source, or it's coming from, God, or something separate from me, which, what is that doing? Just perpetuating this idea that I'm separate from everything else. Like, as soon as you think it can come from something else, it's going to be really, really easy to maintain, or it's going to be, I don't know, desired to maintain that perception of yourself and the stories about yourself and think those are the truth, which is oftentimes the root of where a lot of that shit's coming from anyway. And it just reinforces that.
Yeah, but don't worry. Just chase your excitement and your enthusiasm all the time, right? And again, like, there's nothing said there about the benefit of discomfort. Most people get very excited about avoiding discomfort. And so there's some toxicity in the messaging, but it is very much about feeling better. And that's why there's such a draw from people who want to feel better. We have a follow-up question. Why should it imply that I take less responsibility if I use another individual's if I use other individuals and perspectives to learn more about myself? Why do they exist then otherwise? Okay, so right here, I just want to mention that there is both selfishness and irresponsibility in what you're saying right now, because you're looking at yourself as separate from everyone else. So let's make the example. Let's say that instead of Bashar, there is an individual, let's call him Dave. Okay. And Dave, whenever Dave drinks a lot, he is super insightful. As soon as he drinks enough to not worry about Dave and the rest of his life, as soon as he's slurring a little bit, lots of insights come out of Dave. And everybody piles around Dave to listen to his insights, because when he's in that state of mind, he is super useful to them. See, what you're saying is, well, why can't I get all of these insights out of this person? Why can't I use what they're saying to me to my benefit, without considering the irresponsibility that they're experiencing themselves, as well as the fact that everybody who's around Dave is getting the underlying message that they should get drunk. And so there is a mutual responsibility. There are ripples to this. It's not just about you, is what I'm saying. It's not just about you going, oh, that made me feel really good, while that person is suffering from multiple personality. And everybody who's listening to them is suffering in kind without ever noticing what that person's going through or the underlying message that's getting across to people. This is why he has followers who continue to follow him, is because they don't want to be responsible for themselves. Whereas here on the podcast, in my own life coaching business, and in my life as a whole, the point is that you don't need me. You don't need us. You are enough. You should never have to come back here to feel like you need to be fixed, to feel like there's some piece of the puzzle that you can't figure out yourself. But that's exactly what the message is. While that person continues to suffer, And everybody's just like, yeah, good for them. They're channeling. They're bringing us insights. They're bringing us insights. And we're not thinking about the collective ripple. So I would say right there in your question is the evidence of the lack of responsibility.
Yeah, I think and and this is all like so much of the podcast has just been me unraveling different, insights myself that then I don't know, I feel like with a lot of my content now, I've kind of realized that it's not about doing it for someone else or like sharing advice for someone else. It's just sharing myself and being myself more and being willing to just do whatever I'm doing for the sake of doing it and like doing things for the sake as opposed to doing them for a certain thing. But a lot of people want to hold on to this whole like doing it for another thing to get to another place, but that kind of inherently keeps you in a loop, like in that situation where was it Dave or was it yeah, Dave gets drunk at the bar. It's like keep coming because then it's like then it keeps you on like a never ending loop. If these insights are flowing from him, it's like every time he's getting drunk having insights, it's like there's going to be more and more people rushing back because it's like, all right, well, last time made me feel pretty good, but like maybe this time it'll make me feel really good. And maybe the next time it'll make me feel really, really good. And so, oh, fucking A, even like feeling good doesn't have an endpoint. You can always try and feel better. And people will keep going. Like we see that play out, with when someone is, I don't know, out and they don't want the night to end. So they go to the casino and they're like, oh, I'm feeling good now. Like I'm going to go try and feel better. And then they win a little bit and they're like, oh, I want to feel better. They go to the strip club and then they want to feel even better. They go further into something else, and you can keep going with that. And so all of these things, fuck, like that example of Dave at the bar, Bashar, it 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 comes with the assumption that feeling good, like you can always get more of that as opposed to letting go of the idea that it's always about feeling better and it's just about being yourself because then you're always capable of handling whatever happens as opposed to someone else doing it. But if it's coming from that person, there's always the potential for more. If you think like, you listen like for the fucking podcast or something, listen to us doing whatever the fuck we're doing here. It's like if you think that there was something we said and then gave us the responsibility for it or the credit for it or whatever, which, try and push back on as often as I can with anything because we're just talking. I'm just talking about my own shit on here, basically dealing with my own stuff and talking about it. But if you think that it's coming from us, you're going to expect that there's more to do that. But if you recognize that, okay, maybe they say something, but I'm the one resonating, like I'm the one taking it in. It's a very much communication's always a two-way street. So it goes the same with something like that, like something like Dave at the bar or Bashar or anyone. It's if you're recognizing it, it's coming from you still, even if the sounds feel like they're coming from something else. But if you think it is coming from them, then there's going to be a reliance. There's going to be like this subconscious connection to that as the source. It's like they're getting it from source and then you're getting it from them, so you're getting it from source, and there's that need, and then it's like this sort of hose that you're connected to, and you need to maintain that as opposed to that's not freedom. It's like another tether sort of, as opposed to being free in yourself. So, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about maintaining this loop of feeling worse, feeling better, feeling a lot better, feeling a lot better, and then just like that doesn't end? So what are we here to just like feel as good as we possibly can at all time to be like fucking climax orgasming for our entire life. Like that would be crazy if everyone was trying to do that and just fucking walking around like we're gonna do that was yeah anyway because like that's kind of what we're saying if we think that that's what it's about, but there's no end to that. And then you're always just like grasping for the next thing as opposed to sitting with yourself and kind of relaxing. Like it's not a very relaxed state either. And I'm not sitting here saying there's, something wrong. It's just recognition. It's not judgment. It's just recognition of, there's going to be, you're going to want to keep coming back for more if you're relying upon that or passing the buck to the thing that you're interacting with that isn't you.
I want to go back to the selfishness part of this just for one more second, because it's interesting. So many people who want to validate that perspective of looking outside themselves will continue to follow Bashar. And as such, Bashar will continue to thrive and will continue to hold on to that belief because a certain degree of comfort goes with it. And that by his own doctrine is a good thing. He's feeling positive like all the time. But because that perspective of division isn't questioned, because there is always going to be a perspective of Paul and Bashar versus the rest of humanity, Paul will never feel equal to and on the same footing as the rest of humanity because he has Bashar. And so that will never be questioned. And isn't that a shame? Because if he were to question it with all of the insight that he has, because I'm not saying that the dude doesn't say some good shit. Right? What I'm saying is that the underlying foundation of that good shit is quicksand. But imagine if he were to let go of the quicksand. And so, in responsibility, it's important that we don't just look at Dave and encourage him to keep drinking for our own benefit, when it would benefit all of us to remind Dave that he doesn't need to drink to be insightful. And then Dave can heal. Dave can continue to move on because we're not all focused on ourselves, because Dave is a part of us, right? And so this is why it's important to not just take the insights from channelers, but challenge them. Challenge them. Don't just entertain it because you're benefiting and it makes you feel good. Challenge them, because the only thing that can happen is that they can take those insights and possibly get closer to being responsible for those insights. And responsibility is what allows us to get to more insight. Most importantly, it's what brings us all to the same level. If it's you doing it, then it's all of us doing it. And we're all in this together. As soon as you start bringing in some channeled entity, though, everything becomes askew. So, in the best interest of Bashar, challenge that motherfucker.
Yeah, fuck. Because when you put it like that, that's the most empowering thing you could tell someone who's channeling is like, no, they don't got this. You got this. Like, that's so funny because people will push back hard against you're pushing back against channeling. And yet you're sitting here telling them like, no, you're good. Like, it's so convoluted how badly we don't want to take responsibility. And all you're saying is, nah, dude, like, you got this, man. Like, you're doing great. You don't have to suckle on the teat of Bashar and then spit the milk out back in our face. You got it. It's like, it's okay. You can take your mouth off the teat for a second. Just talk to us. I'm tired of getting milk spat in my face. And like, oh man, that's so many things. Like the amount of how badly we just it's like we inherently feel disempowered. And so we don't want someone telling us that it's okay. Like we don't have to feel disempowered. It's like, no, I feel disempowered and I want to feel I want someone to validate my perspective. I want to just feel like I'm correct in that. Like I feel, oh God, that's so funny. We just want validation of our perspective on things. And so if we feel disempowered, like he's kind of, and he's just like very much out in the open with it too. Like I am disempowered. Like I am nothing without Bashar is like what he's saying. It's like, no, dude, like you're whole. You're not like 20% and then 80% is Bashar. But then, it allows us to, and we see, oh my God, there's just like so many reflections of this. Like it's the same with God and religion. It's like I'm nothing without Jesus. I came across some fucking video the other day. It was like it was two like a couple talking about Jesus and they were like, have you talked to Jesus? Like, how do you feel on days that you're not talking to Jesus? And fuck, I didn't even. This is so. I just barely saw it in passing. It was on some live stream of a kid I follow, and yeah, he's apparently, yeah, he and his girlfriend are very religious, and he was asking her like, how do you feel, when you don't talk to Jesus? And they were talking about something else, and then they got into like some religious stuff, and I was like, all right, this is time for me to go. But what I caught was she was like, yeah, I just don't quite feel like myself. I feel more down, I feel like a little bit more judgmental of things, but then I talk to Jesus and then I feel like myself and then I feel happy and then I feel good and then I feel like I can authentically express myself. And it's like, motherfucker, that is disempowering as shit. Like, no, you don't need Jesus. It's like how I used to feel with meditation. I used to feel the same exact way. It's just a variation. It's so funny how we talk about all of these different things in society and we just pick the one that we're mostly born with, like a religion that we're born into, a belief system we're born into, a thing that makes us feel better, whatever immediately, we get some cessation of our suffering and then we pass the buck onto that. So for me, for a while, it was meditation, just like they were doing in the video. As much as I'll talk shit about that, I was doing the same exact thing with religion. It replaced Jesus with meditation and say, someone was like, Andrew, how do you feel when you don't meditate throughout the day? Well, I don't quite feel like myself. I feel like I can't handle things as well. But then I meditate and then I can do anything. And then I feel amazing. And then it's like my life is all hunky dory and I feel good and I feel better. And like fucking A. It's the same exact thing. And it's the same thing with Bashar. It's like all we're saying is like, dude, like open your eyes up, you know, get off stage for or stay on stage and just like, chill out and chat with us. But it's like it invalidates his perspective of himself. Like he doesn't want to question that at all. And we don't want to think that we can do it ourselves and take that responsibility. But we do it in so many ways, shapes, or forms, whether it's channeling, whether it's religion, whether it's meditation, whether it's this, whether it's that. And they're all variations of kind of the same sort of thing, as opposed to, letting go of the need to feel better or think there is a right way or think there is a correct way. And then just, be left with where we're at. But at least we're paying attention to what's going on. Because if we think there's a right way, we're always looking for the right way, as opposed to looking at what's happening, as opposed to looking at reality, and it's another distraction, looking for the right way to feel and the right way to act.
Oh, especially when you always want to feel positive, when you always want to feel happy, when you always want to feel, with your ideal version of what reality should be, right? And that is unfortunately the reason for Bashar, not the person, the concept, the construct, is because that is a protective force. In the same way that believing in God or source is believing in something that's got my back, it knows better. Obviously, there's a rhyme and a reason to all this. It's just another form of self-soothing Because the alternative is that you're not always going to feel excited and enthusiastic. And sometimes you're going to be uncomfortable and challenged, and you're going to get down and be tense and do all of that. And it's on you. And there's nothing wrong with any of it. You see, all of this is very much based on the assumption that I should feel good all the time. And if I'm not feeling good, if I'm feeling alone, if I'm feeling confused, if I don't understand why this is happening to me, I'm going to go to talk to Bashar. And that's going to give me a rhyme and a reason. And this is why, again, you will inevitably end up with fucking whales being dolphin oversouls. Because this is the thing, is the alternative is to question the all-knowing aspect of this limitless intelligence in another fucking being, or this futuristic, I don't even know. I could read you what it is. But the point is that there's a security to it. And the alternative is that you're not always going to feel good. And that's what this is. It's another form of control. If I'm not feeling good, I need to turn to something that will guide the way. Right? If I'm not feeling good, obviously there's something going wrong. Going wrong according to what? According to who? In all of this, there is this belief in something other. All of it. And the alternative is dealing with all of how you feel, not just chasing happiness. And that's what it gives you the ability to empathize. That's the point. That's what brings you down to ground level. This is why it's so important to feel everything, not just what you like, because it's the things you don't like that have taught you the best fucking lessons in your life. And that's true for channelers. The best lesson for them would be that the insights are from them. But that would be so incredibly painful because of the reliance that they've built on what is ultimately a source of comfort, a fiction.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me, last week we did the movie review on In Time, and like there were parts of that movie that made me really fucking uncomfortable because it pointed things out that I hadn't seen. Like there's ways that we avoid looking at certain aspects of society if it makes us feel uncomfortable, and so we just don't look at it. But that's what causes the change. Like that's what helps perpetuate change and shifts in things when you're willing to feel a little bit uncomfortable and look at something that may make you feel uncomfortable. But if it was always about feeling comfortable all the time, then we would just keep running for that. And then we're always chasing something. Like we're always chasing that feeling of comfort, of feeling good. And like this is what all of these things kind of perpetuate, is the chasing of feeling good. Like if you think it's all about feeling better all of the time, then you never really relax. Like you're always either trying to maintain the good feelings or you're trying to find the good feelings. And like that's kind of it. Like that's kind of the constant cycle that you're in, and that's the constant cycle that most of us experience all the time, and things like this perpetuate that, and figuring out why things feel certain ways as opposed to letting go of there being a right way to feel, a correct way to feel, sitting with whatever you're feeling. And again, like paying attention to what's actually going on. But sometimes paying attention to what's actually going on isn't necessarily super comfortable. And that's okay. And so we'll just avoid that in order to feel better, because it's this assumption that feeling good is the answer. Like my life is about feeling good all the time as opposed to living it. But even that, like just that assumption in itself is going to make your life miserable. Like it's going to make your life a living hell, essentially, constantly trying to maintain or running towards, as opposed to just relaxing where you're at. It's going to keep you in that cycle, in that loop. When you hold on to the idea that there's a right way to live, because then it's something you either got to hold on to it or you got to try and find it. And if you don't feel like you got it, you got to try and find it. And if you feel like you got it, you got to hold on and hope that it isn't lost. And then you build this sort of wall around yourself with a moat and alligators and cut yourself off from all the experiences because you're just trying to maintain that as opposed to living. And again, it's another prison. It's another prison that we create if we think based on the assumption that there is a right way to be or a correct way to live or a right way to feel at all times. Like they're inevitably, it's inevitably going to be tied to that cycle.
Absolutely. Well, it's very much like running from our suffering makes us more sensitive to that suffering. Like whatever we're afraid of, if we run away from it, it becomes scarier. Right. One of the best lessons I ever learned in Kung Fu was, and I remember this line very clearly from my Sifu, there's nothing more natural than being hit. And I was like, that's interesting. But then I thought about being hit as a spectrum of human contact based on lightness or force, like more force or less force, right? Like people have been patting you on the back, people have been hugging you, people have been slapping you, people have been tapping you on the chest like your whole life. I mean, you roughhoused with your friends when you were younger. Like there's nothing more natural than being regardless of touch, being able to tend to build this. Especially when you're learning martial art. You're like, oh God, if I get hit, it's going to hurt. You'd be surprised how much you can take, right? And how much you can take and just shrug it off after the initial pain. But most of that pain is fear, right? And so that's very much the problem, is that we have to go into the storm to get over the storm. Somebody was talking to me yesterday about, I think they were comparing the behavior of cows and buffaloes. I don't know where they heard this, but cows will run away from the storm. And so unknowingly the storm will stay with them until they're cornered, right? And so they actually have to go through more of the storm because they're running away from it. And so it's staying above them as they're running away. Whereas buffaloes will run towards the storm to go through it as fast as fucking possible and to get it over with. Right. And so it's very much like what you were saying earlier. It's like, oh God, I gotta relax. I gotta relax. It's like, no, you gotta accept you're tense. Right. And just, all right, I'm tense. Okay, I'm tense. And immediately you start to relax because you're accepting it. You're not trying to relax. You're going, all right, I'm tense. I'll deal with it. Right. And that's the change in attitude that causes that relaxation. Right? But the whole point at the end of the day just comes down to the fact that we may think that there are some valuable insights that are coming from these quote unquote sources. And we may think that we are getting our own insights from an outside source, which is usually why we entertain that shit at the end of the day. But it is far more empowering to recognize that you are the source of your insight. And it's not that you can't go out there and take in other sources of insight. It's not that you can't listen to other people, but listen with an element or an ounce of discernment. Listen for where it's coming from. Is it coming from them? Are they willing to admit it comes from them? And if not, then what really is the message? It's really all I wanted to get across today. And I brought this up specifically because I was in a conversation with somebody about channelers. And it is so very important that we recognize that what we're seeing isn't something metaphysical, but is the equivalent to a mental illness. And somebody can have a mental illness or be suffering through a mental illness and still be insightful. We forget that just because this person is saying things that are, mostly true, that does not mean that they're not holding on to illusions that cause them to suffer. And so it's important to recognize it's not just about you. As much as it is, it's not about the you you're thinking about. And it's not about the insights. It's about coming together. And that is the other problem with the channelers, is this idea of them being above everybody else, sitting on a dais, as it were, talking about all the insights that they're getting from another source, and everybody's looking up to them. And you can just see from the imagery that that's fucking disgusting. Like, I don't like the idea of somebody looking up to me or us in any way, shape, or form, which is why I like the retreats. There's no fucking stage at all. And the only reason there should be a stage, in my opinion, is if you have so many people that they can't see you otherwise. So it's functional. But to have a room full of people and then still put yourself up on a stair, to still put yourself up on a platform in a small room full of people, says worlds about your state of mind. And again, I have nothing against the channelers themselves. I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for them, and I wish that people would address them rather than letting themselves drink themselves to death. Because a life of irresponsibility, regardless of how profitable it might be, is still a slow life of stagnant death. Imagine what they could be doing if they let go of the need for Bashar, or the need for Abraham Hicks, or the need for any of these channeled beings. Imagine the freedom that goes with knowing that you're the source of your insight. And yet we hold that away from them because we're selfishly looking to them to answer our problems, and in doing so, making it so much harder for them to resist the temptation of being looked up to. See, again, I have nothing against channelers. Good for them. I'm glad they're out there. I'm glad they're talking. Why aren't we talking back? Why aren't we saying, hey, that's really good, but I think that's coming from you? It's because we're so fucking hell-bent on trying to feel better ourselves that we don't give a shit about Bashar. That's the worst part. We don't give a shit about Daryl. That's his name. We just care about what he's doing for us. Put on a show. Dance, monkey. Thanks for the insights. It's too bad you got to suffer with this lifelong debilitating belief that you are not the source of your own insight, just so that way we can feel better.
Whew, man, I really like that that example. I had never heard that about buffaloes and cows, and this all kind of ties into that. Like all of these things that we've been talking about are ways in which we are cows. Feeling something, running from it. Like I was saying the other day with when I used to feel certain discomforts or whatever, felt like I was suffering, hop on YouTube, like figure out what's going on, as opposed to letting go of the idea that there's something to solve or something to fix, and then just sitting with it, or running towards the storm and being like, all right, I'm feeling certain things, whatever, stop having an opinion of it, stop trying to run from it. And because inevitably you're going to get to a point where it does catch up, or you do get to a spot where it settles on you, and just that perspective right there, that's what gets you through it instead of it staying with you, because it's going to keep going if you keep running from it. And so if you think that something like Bashar, or something like any of those things kind of just perpetuate that mentality of, as opposed to running towards it, it's like, I need something that is going to help fix this or solve this, instead of just, sitting with whatever you're feeling, letting go of the resistance, and just running through the storm and getting through it is the quickest way through, always. But all of these things are a part of this loop of it just feeling better for a bit. It's like, all right, this gets me from the storm for now, and I get to think about myself in this way, shape, or form, or this insight hits, or let go of this, and then it's on that person, as opposed to, all right, maybe there is no correct or incorrect way to do anything, or feel anything, or go through anything, or deal with anything, or there's not because then if there is, then even going into any situation, there's a need to prepare. It's kind of like we've talked about in the past, like traveling without luggage. So wherever you show up, you get to do that. And that's far more freeing than lugging around all of these things, just in case this, just in case that. It's like, no, you'll figure it out once you get there. You'll figure it out when you're there, and then you have the opportunity to learn certain things and possibly derive certain new insights. But if you're constantly lugging around all of the tools, all of the ways that help you feel better, just in case, It's like that gets very heavy. Then there's this reliance, and then, you're like feeling down or bad or whatever, and you're like sifting through your now massive toolbox that has turned into a tool shed. And you're like looking around for the thing that's going to help, for the thing that's going to allow you to feel better. And it takes a lot. And then, you're lugging around a tool shed everywhere instead of just a tool belt, which turns into a toolbox, which turns into a tool shed. And we keep latching on to more and more of these things as opposed to dropping all of it and just whatever happens, happens. I'll be able to handle it. And then I'll learn something from that because I've let go of the idea that there's a right way to feel, a correct way. And I got to keep looking for it. And I'm always fluctuating in my feelings and the things that I'm going through dealing with. But as long as I'm not feeling good, then I'm gonna have to find that thing. Despite realizing, no, I'm gonna fluctuate a lot, and there's certain things to be experiences to be derived from different ways that I'm feeling, and it's all just bringing my attention back to where I'm at. But if it's not about sitting with yourself, if it is about feeling better all the time, you're very rarely gonna be here, just paying attention to where you're at. It's like we were talking about on Patreon the other day. Pam brought up like checking in with yourself, how often we check in with ourselves or check in with other people. And yeah, I ask it all the time, like, hey, how you doing? Whatever. It's like a common just, hey, what's up sort of thing. But we're constantly kind of doing that with ourselves, constantly checking in. It's like being a cow or a buffalo and constantly looking up, like, oh, is a storm coming? Oh, is a storm coming? Oh, is a storm there? Oh, is a storm passing yet? Oh, it's like, constantly checking in on the weather. It's like, oh, is a storm going to come next soon? Huh? As opposed to just adapting as it comes, as it happens, and facing it, which then is going to make it easier the next time around. And then it's not even about how quickly you get through it. It's just about not being afraid of storms, like shifting that perspective of storms. But all of these things allow you to maintain this perception that storms are bad. There's nothing saying that storms are bad. Storms are opportunities to grow and learn stuff. It's a shift in environment, potential shift in perspective of things. But all of these things allow you to maintain the idea that storms are a bad thing, as opposed to something that maybe can be useful in bringing your attention back to what's actually happening.
And it's especially important to remember that if you've been putting off a storm for a long time, because the storm is ultimately just your battle with responsibility. It's really what the storm is. I don't like this. There's all kinds of resistance. Like, doesn't matter what you like, you're going through it. This is it. This is what this is. But every insight or every moment that brings you closer to responsibility is uncomfortable. That's the storm. You're going through it to eventually come to a place where you've gained strength and you're not so easily rattled by the burden of responsibility. You don't see it as a burden anymore. But in order to do that, you have to face that responsibility. And if you've been putting it off a long time, it gets harder to do that, especially if you've developed not just a career and uh, and an income, but a following of people who are relying on your continued irresponsibility. It would be very difficult to suddenly go, you know what? I've been talking to myself this whole time. And yet, how transformative would that be? Bashar has been being channeled for 37 years. 37 years of believing in a fiction, perpetuating a fiction, having other people reinforce a fiction, validate a fiction, disempower yourself through a fiction. It would be so very difficult to put that down, especially given, well, what would everybody say? What would everybody think? Where would I make my money? It's like, fuck that. How much of a ripple would you make coming out and finally, out of all of these fucking channelers, going, it's me. And therefore it's you. And I know after years of avoiding it, of dodging it, of believing in it, of making myself believe in it, that it really does come back down to me. That message would be so incredibly fucking powerful, and it's the reason it's worth it to face the storm. It's the reason it's worth it to come out and say whatever it is your truth is, and to face that storm, so that way you can live with more responsibility and you can embody more responsibility, and therefore you are rippling out responsibility. More people can look at you and go, oh fuck, they got that way through responsibility, not through believing in some fiction, not believing in some silver bullet, not believing in some extraterrestrial from the future who knows everything, but through facing it, through being uncomfortable, through going through shit they didn't like, and letting go of things that they did like. That's how they grew. That's how they came to that insight. I can do that too. It's far more powerful than saying some fucking extraterrestrial is giving me messages and insights that are going to change your fucking life, because it's bullshit.
Yeah, and that's like so much of the responsibility we don't want to face or look at. It's like, talking about society, not wanting to recognize that we are society. I am society, and see that shift. And it's again like perpetuating that feeling better versus getting better sort of thing. Like it's much easier to talk about the issues with things going on than to recognize like, oh, there's something I can do about that. There's something I can, you know, do in response to that. It's like, with mentality shifts, it's like what we're doing or doing our best to do here. It's like, oh, you got a business that doesn't have set goals. It's like, yeah, because if we were to maintain this idea of I know what's best, and so I'm going to keep doing it, and setting goals and doing these things and thinking that I know what's right, like that's in order to what? To get this to work in the way that I think it should work. Like that's perpetuating the same mentality that we're discussing here. And so it does always come back to, being about it, walking the walk instead of just talking the talk, and expressing those things and sharing those things and doing those things. But yeah, like, because again, and I haven't with Bashar or channelers, haven't necessarily, I don't know, like, does he have a point that he keeps coming back to? Like, does he talk about responsibility, or is there like a
It all
point
comes
that he,
down to the formula,
okay.
which is so follow your excitement formula. We've discussed that. Those would be the 5 points that I illustrated further. Aside from that, you are a non-physical consciousness that is experiencing physical reality. You are here on Earth at this time because you chose to be. You were created in the image of the Creator. Your essential essence is unconditional love, and the experience of ecstasy is your birthright. The highest purpose of your life is to be yourself, to be the best, to the best of your ability, and live each moment as fully as possible. You always have free will and the freedom to choose. Anything you can imagine that is relevant for your life's theme is possible for you to experience. You attract your life's experiences through interaction of your strongest beliefs, emotions, and actions. Excitement is the physical translation of the vibrational resonance that is your true core natural being. Follow your excitement. You are naturally abundant, and your choices are always supported by creation. There is actually one moment in creation. Everything you experience is the same moment from a different point of view. You create the past and the future from the here and now. You are an eternal being, and while you may change your form, your consciousness cannot cease to exist. Everything you experience is another aspect of yourself, and you are loved so unconditionally by creation that you can even choose to believe that you are not loved. So again, little bit of good stuff in there, right? And an overwhelming amount of the creators taking care of you. There's another being watching you, multiple other beings at this point, because now it's not just the Bazaars out there fucking, watching our back, but now there's the creator as well, right? And that, what was it? Excitement and enthusiasm or happiness is our birthright. It's our birthright. Jesus.
I think he said like ecstasy or something like an extreme thing.
Exactly.
Like, Oh, ecstasy is like the extreme of feeling good, basically, right? Like it's the not endpoint necessarily, but pretty far down the endpoint of feeling really, 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 really,
Just short of
really
blowing your load.
yeah, right? Oh, man. That is so funny. Like, that being birthright, all the assumptions, and even as you were going through that list, like, it just having a list that long, it's almost I don't know if it's done on purpose just to make people think like, "All right, well, I'm not gonna necessarily remember all of that, so I'm just gonna keep listening to Bashar, and, like, he's always gonna have something for me." You know, it's like it's purposely, like, not simple, not straightforward. It kinda, like, bounces around, weaves up and down. It's super long. It's like this whole thing. Yeah, I don't wanna look at that or memorize that or do whatever with that. So I'm just going to keep coming back to Bashar and keep listening. And even with that, like I think one point was being yourself too. It's like, what is he doing? What's his name again? Ronald,
Daryl.
Daryl. Yeah. Like, is Daryl being himself by being Bashar? Like, I don't understand how he reconciles with that, if that's one of the core beliefs or if he's
Oh, here's
different
another
because
one. You'll
he's
like
a
this.
channeler.
There's 5 laws of creation. This is on his website. 1, you exist. 2, everything is here and now. 3, the one is the all and the all are the one. 4, what you put out is what you get back. And 5, everything changes except the first 4 laws. Now, can you see the glaring contradiction in number 3? That the one is the all and the all are the one, except for Bashar.
Right. Because if that was the case, then everyone's Bashar. And there's like, of course, I mean, with any of these things to exist and to be able to continue to exist, there has to be cognitive dissonance with it. And, it goes for anything, but in order to maintain that, that the continuation of Bashar, like I'm very curious how he would look at that, or if it was just, oh well, yeah, it's connected, but I, have been bestowed upon with the weight of having to bear Bashar, and it's my duty, and it's not freedom by any means. I'm doing my duty here. I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for all of you. I'm taking on the burden. One day, someone else I will pass Bashar will be passed down to someone else to handle the burden, but it doesn't make me better. It just makes I am burdened now. But because I got the burden, I'm feeling really, really, really good about myself. And I got the connection. It's like, I've been chosen. Like that feels amazing. That's a great feeling to have that. But then it's passed off as, you know, I'm not responsible and this is my weight, my burden to bear throughout my life. And so it's kind of like, I don't know, contorted, convoluted, whatever you want to say, a bit able to be avoided. And so I'm able to maintain that. But it's yeah, that's funny how it's yeah, it's all those things and like directly contradictory because if the one is the all and the all is the one. And even that, like, I think it even says the one is the all and the all are the one. Like, obviously, saying all and saying are is implied that all is plural as opposed to all being one thing. Like, recognizing, like, it's still maintaining, yeah, it's like we're all one, but like there's still a we, and that is it's funny because say you can say that, but it's still kind of the same thing as like oh, everything is connected. Even that statement, like it's all kind of inherently paradoxical and contradictory because if everything's connected, then there is no everything. It's just one thing. And again, if it's one thing, then it's a one thing and it's you can't even say it necessarily, but even in that, like the all are the one. I don't know. It's just it's like more easily able to maintain the idea that there is an all and then I'm more I'm closer to the source of that all, which is still the all, but kinda.
This has been a fun episode. I just want to throw this out there to Daryl or Bashar, or both, or neither, however you'd like to put it. We'd love to have you on the show. I would love to talk to you about this because obviously I want to give you the opportunity to explain your point of view. Obviously, I would love for you to explain to me how you've managed to reconcile this in your messaging as well as the underlying, I guess, message behind what you're saying, which is that lack of responsibility that you have to look to someone else rather than just yourself. I would love to know how you see that as being something that is a positive ripple and isn't just perpetuating irresponsibility. And most importantly, if Daryl doesn't want to look at that, I would be curious to ask Bashar what they think about perpetuating irresponsibility, because I think that elevated state of mind might have a more interesting I guess point of view on that question. Because that's all that's happening, is that there's a part of Daryl that's really caught up in Daryl, and then there's the part of Daryl that's not so caught up in Daryl and able to access more insights as such, and Daryl just holds on to Daryl. So just wanted to mention before we end this episode that we have a Patreon call after this. It's Sunday today. So we have 2 Patreon calls, a tier 2 and a tier 3 call. You can join us, patreon.com/dualistic unity. That said, we also have a viral video contest right now, which means that if you would like to make a video on any platform that Dualistic Unity has an account, you can make a video about Dualistic Unity or of Dualistic Unity. You can use clips of us, do whatever it is you'd like, and you can win a free ticket to our California retreat, which I'm very excited about. It's going to be April 11th to April 15th. We're near Big Bear Lake. It's going to be just an awesome time of year, and it's going to be a lot of fun to hang out. So you can win that ticket. It's worth almost $1,800 US just by creating a video and getting more views than anyone else. So it really comes down to how creative you want to be and how many videos you want to make, because you can make as many videos as you like. I'm very excited about this contest. It really gives everybody a chance to I guess use your favorite clips. If there's anything that's really resonated with you, grab that, put it on TikTok or put it on Instagram, tag us in it, and it could win you a free ticket to come and hang out with us in person, which of course I'm always very excited about. I promise I won't be on a raised platform.
No raised platforms. That's the only rule we got at the retreat, among others. Maintain sensitivity and awareness and whatnot, and all those good things. But and again, not even rules, because Anyway, the viral video contest. I'm very excited for that. This has been a very fun chat. That would be dope to talk with Daryl. I would love to chat with Daryl and Bashar. Maybe we get both of them on at some point. But the viral video contest, with that, I mean, you can just take clips of the podcast too. That's the beauty. It doesn't, if you're not comfortable filming a video of yourself, you don't have to. But with it, like, you can put out as many videos. We've already seen some awesome videos come through, and you never know. Like, the winner may not have 100,000 views. The winner may have 3,000 views. Maybe 300 views. You never really know. So you might as well toss your ticket in the hat, or whatever raise you want to use for that, and get something out there, because you never know. And that's an $1,800 ticket right there, and a chance to hang with us in person in a dope spot and just have some fun. So very much looking forward to seeing what comes of that situation and the contest. But this has been a blast. I appreciate everyone for hopping in here and listening to us rant a little bit about responsibility.
Hell yeah. Lots of fun. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll see you next time or on Patreon.